Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1201. Plan determined. This is the only way. Mei Shuayan paced around with furrowed brows, considering how best to take advantage of this weakness. One thing was for certain: if this weakness could be exploited well enough, it would definitely be able to deal the strange races a huge blow, or even completely eliminate the threat of the stealth kills technique. If the strategy was successful, and this battle went as they imagined, it would be enough to cause the strange races to not dare to use their stealth kills technique in future battles. As long as they did not use those damnable techniques, what did their side have to fear? In the previous battles, the most difficult thing they had to deal with was those freaks who could disappear with no warnings. And it was exactly this that had caused the most damage to the Xian continent's forces throughout all the past wars. But although she had information about this key weakness, she couldn't figure out any good ways to use it. Just as Mei Shuayan was wrecking her brains in deep thought, young Master Jun suddenly appeared. Right now, there seemed to be something about with Jun Moxie's body. But as to what it was exactly, Mei Shuayan couldn't tell. It was too difficult to describe. She could just feel that the current Jun Moxie was very different from the past. The truth was, even Jun Moxie himself also had this weird feeling. After absorbing the lightning tribulation, Jun Moxie immediately returned to the Hongjun Pagoda to recuperate. At the same time, he roared a few times to vent the emotions in his heart. To his surprise, he discovered that the Hongjun Pagoda seemed to be different from before. It seemed as though a certain area was gurgling, but it still hadn't reached the critical point. About this strangeness, Jun Moxie was also extremely curious. At the same time, he could feel that his cultivation realm seemed to have moved again, as if he was about to break through. The reason for this was not difficult to understand. This should be a transformation after the Hongjun Pagoda had absorbed so much lightning. Although it felt strange, it was definitely a progress towards a positive development. Could it be that absorbing large amounts of lightning energy can help me to break through and increase my cultivation faster? Towards this point, Jun Moxie himself was also rather unsure. And it was because of this reason that he'd stayed longer in the Hongjun Pagoda. To investigate the matter. But he hadn't thought that in just this short period, not only had he failed to find the answers he sought, he'd instead become even more confused. Also, he'd missed meeting the #1 expert of the strange races and the conversation between the peak experts of the three powers. Young Master Jun pounded his chest, feeling somewhat regretful. If he'd been here just now, he would never have let that fellow get away so simply. No matter what, that fellow should get some pounding on the bed before leaving. As per his namesake, young Master Jun sighed, deeply regretting missing such a heaven-sent opportunity. Others had already come here to get pounded, but he was absent to give the pounding. Of course, if it had really came to the pounding, young Master Jun would have used blood of yellow flame to do the pounding. It certainly wouldn't be in that way. A heavy sigh rang out, distracting Mei Shuayan from her thoughts and causing her to furrow her brows with annoyance. The heavily sighing young Master Jun only discovered that Mei Shuayan was troubled and hurriedly swallowed his sighs. After she finished recounting the problem, Jun Moxie's expression also grew heavy. If he could make use of this knowledge, it would undoubtedly be a formidable weapon. Although Eagle King had discovered this weakness, the forces they had were too little, and their adaptation ability was not high. Thirdly, the situation was too chaotic, and there was no time to spend thought on the subject. As for Bear King, if he could think of anything, he wouldn't be Bear King. This is the knowledge that little eagle left for us before he died. It's the ultimate weapon to use against the strange races and destroy them. We definitely cannot put that knowledge to waste. This can be the key for us to turn the situation around on the strange races. Mei Shuayan bit her lips and said with a trembling voice. Her brother had paid the price of his life in exchange for this information. So Mei Shuayan naturally valued it highly. I know. And I understand how important this information is as well. Jun Moxie nodded as he also started to pace around. Furrowing his brows deeply in thought, all kinds of battle strategies that he'd seen in his past life began to flash through his mind as he began to evaluate and compare them. He also began to think back to the experience he had while exchanging blows with those other assassins in his past life. As he ruminated, there seemed to be a path that had opened up in front of his eyes. But when he looked up, it had disappeared, turning hazy and difficult to understand. In roughly what kind of situation would the strange races deploy large amounts of experts to battle? Jun Moxie fell silent for a moment and asked. A situation where the strange races would send out enduring ghosts, enduring earth, enduring heavens level experts? That would only be when the battle had reached the decisive moment to determine victory and defeat. Only then will they send all their experts to make a full-strength push, ending the war. Perhaps only then would the strange races truly mobilize large amounts of experts who could change the whole results of the war. Mei Shuayan said with furrowed brows. But if we wait until that time, most of our battle strength will have also already been shaved away. Although everyone's strength has risen greatly again, in terms of numbers, we are still on the absolute disadvantage. Our enemies might outnumber us by 30 times, 50 times, even 100 times. If they use the human sea strategy, aiming to drain our forces as quickly as possible, then even if we manage to barely hold on, what will we use to deal with the later part of the battle? Jun Moxie became even more troubled. That's right. This is indeed very difficult to maneuver. If it isn't handled properly, it would instead turn on our heads, allowing them to win with one stroke. At that time, it would be a disaster. Mei Shuayan's forehead was creased with worry. They knew the lethal weakness of the strange races, but they simply could not come up with a proper way to exploit it. This kind of feeling was too maddening. There will most likely not be many experts at the beginning of the fight, even if there are some enduring earths and enduring heavens mixed in there. It won't be too much. Jun Moxie said with a slight nod. So, once the battle opens up, we only need to tell the men to be careful. I trust that they should be able to minimize the damage that the stealth kills technique can deal. So, in a normal fight, there's no ways to utilize this flaw. Yes. A pained look flashed in Mei Shuayan's eyes. No matter what war one went to, injuries and death were unavoidable. As for the decisive battle, Jun Moxie's eyes grew brighter and brighter and he suddenly slapped his hands. I got it. We can do that. Do that? Mei Shuayan opened her mouth and looked at him. It's like this. We'll gather all our Saint Venerable experts together. Then at the most opportune moment, insert them into the foremost position between the two armies. Then we will lock on to the experts on the enemy's side. There's no need to use our spiritual sense to thoroughly lock onto them. Everyone only needs to remember a few faces. Then, the instant any of those faces are discovered to have disappeared, it would mean that the strange races is preparing to mobilize their experts. And many invisible enemies will be killing their way over. This shouldn't be wrong, right? Jun Moxie said with a slight smile. That is indeed a logical understanding. When multiple experts from the enemy's side disappear, they would naturally be charging towards us. Is there any need to mention it? Mei Shuayan was somewhat confused. Don't be in a hurry. Let me continue. At that time, Our troops will be split into 4 groups. The first group will focus entirely on defense, stopping the attacks of the enemy. The second group will begin attacking the space 3 zhang above and in front of the first group. The third group will attack 6 zhang around the first and second group. The fourth group will continue enlarging the attack range to 10 zhang. As Jun Moxie spoke, he picked up a stone and began to draw the plan out on the ground. Just like that, after the attacks of the 3 groups at the back are completed, everyone will immediately begin to charge into the midst of the strange race's ranks, deploying the most chaotic melee fight, causing those freaks to not be able to utilize their stealth kills techniques. My guess is, at least half of the strange race's experts will be caught and killed in such a manner. Jun Moxie threw the stone away and shrugged. This can be said to be the best solution in a situation with no solutions. It's also the dumbest and most direct way of dealing with them, however. It's simple and easy to execute, and also the most effective strategy we have right now. Mei Shuayan squatted down and carefully examined the battle strategy that Jun Moxie had drawn out. After a long time, she nodded slowly. You're right. At this moment, this is the only and most effective method we have to kill and injure a large number of the strange race's experts. Remember, the most crucial point of this strategy lies in the heaven reversal pills. Jun Moxie's eyes flashed. All the soldiers must not swallow the pill yet, no matter how injured they are. They must endure until the enemy sees that our army is falling apart and summons their experts to end the battle. At that time, they can all consume the heaven reversal pills together. By this plan, we can deal the greatest damage to the enemy. Yes. Mei Shuayan's eyes lit up. However, if we do that, there will undoubtedly be sacrifices. Jun Moxie nodded heavily. Or perhaps, that is the price we must pay. Mei Shuayan sighed, her heart seemingly choked up by something, causing her to feel extremely uncomfortable. That is the only way. Jun Moxie raised his head and began to think over the details of this plan again. Sighing heavily, he said, "Right now is not the time to hesitate and be emotional. I too wish to let our brothers return safe and sound, however, that is obviously impossible. Perhaps there is another point that we can take advantage of." Mei Shuayan suddenly looked up and said, "What is that?" Jun Moxie asked hurriedly. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1202. Sarira. It's the all-seeing Rakshasa. Xiao Ying. Mei Shuayan pointed at the drawing on the ground and said, "This attack strategy of ours is only a very crude and direct one. It relies completely on our estimations. Even if the estimations are good, a battle will always be susceptible to countless changes in every moment. We might not be able to use the strategy perfectly that way, but if we have Xiao Ying with us, it will be a completely different matter. Because she is the only person who can see every movement on the enemy's side. If she appears at the suitable time to command the troops, the probability of our strategy being successful will be much higher." "You are right." Jun Moxie patted his thigh and exclaimed, "How could I have forgotten about her? Isn't she the only person who can see through the techniques of those freaks? Back then, even I." Jun Moxie suddenly could not help but think back to his own encounter. Hadn't the yin-yang escape art which had never failed end up exposed because of the all-seeing eye? Following that, the lithe figure of Xiao Ying appeared once again in his mind. In that moment, a thought appeared in his heart. If I could get a hand on both, I wonder what a happy thing that would be. Mei Shuayan had only started to feel happy at finally resolving the huge problem that had been troubling her for a long time, when she lifted her head and saw the perverted look on young Master Jun's face. She'd only just finished speaking about Xiao Ying, And that fellow already had such a lustful look. This was simply too obvious. There wasn't anything much to say about it. Mei Shuayan instantly felt a sour feeling in her heart. And her hand shot out with incredibly dexterity, grabbing onto the side of his waist with 2 fingers, without any hesitation. She twisted 180 degrees, followed by 360 degrees in the opposite direction, clenching her teeth. She smiled and asked in a creepy voice, "What were you thinking about?" "I was thinking about." "Ah." Jun Moxie yowled with pain. This lass had actually even used the art of unlocking Heaven's fortune to enhance her twisting strength. The damage was enhanced. And in addition, that area was the most painful spot to be pinched for men. Jun Moxie gasped and sucked in a cold breath of air, unable to utter any words from his mouth. Mei Shuayan ultimately still grew soft-hearted, and she relaxed her grip, snorting angrily, I just mentioned the name Qiaoying. And you immediately had such a perverted look on your face. There are so many beautiful sisters back at home. What are you still dreaming about? Are you starting to have more strange thoughts again? Are you planning to add another one into the harem?" Shuayan, shouldn't you first speak reasonably first? Young Master Jun quickly countered. "Oh. You are on the side of reason now. I wonder what grand reasons young Master Jun has. This wife is willing to listen." Although Great Beauty Mei was speaking in such a nice tone right now, her 2 fingers was actually pinching even harder than before. "OWW. Why you naturally need to be willing to listen, aren't you the main cause behind all of this? You definitely wouldn't allow me to think. But how is that possible?" Young Master Jun winced in pain and said, "This elder brother is a normal man who couldn't be any more normal. Is it possible to not want that thing? If I didn't think about it, it would be the truly strange matter, wouldn't it? If any man is subjected to the same treatment I had, having their wife do a transformation act at the most crucial moment, running away and refusing to cooperate, they will be like this elder brother, not even having a place to cry to. If that happens a few more times, I'm afraid I'll need to castrate myself to end the torment. There's no need to be a man anymore. I can just enter the palace to serve the royal family as a eunuch." You are still angry with me." Mei Shuayan suddenly turned a little guilty, and her eyes darted around uncomfortably. I didn't want to do that as well. That time was because I wasn't ready yet. Why you're that thing looked too scary. How could I possibly endure that? Then, when will you be ready? How about right now? Relax. I will be very gentle. Very, very gentle." Jun Moxie said excitedly. All that talk about the most painful area to be pinched had already been thrown out of his mind. And young Master Jun had steered the conversation in this manner on purpose. Apart from having the effect of dissolving the awkward situation, he could force Great Beauty Mei to soften her stance. After all, she couldn't simply continue avoiding his advances forever, right? If she transformed every time at the most crucial moment, in just 1 or 2 times more, young Master Jun would probably be so frustrated that he would resort to drilling the ground. How could one prepare for that kind of thing, and how could you be gentle? Mei Shuayan's face turned as red as a sheet of cloth. Then, you're saying that you will never be ready? Jun Moxie nearly spat out a mouthful of blood. You need to at least give me some time, to slowly. Mei Shuayan's voice softened to the level of a mosquito. Young Master Jun hammered his chest in an aggrieved manner. Honey, please just have some pity on me. All right? If I continue to be so stuffed, these old sack of pearls would wrinkle into Sariras. What? Sarira? What are Sariras? Mei Shuayan coughed embarrassingly and asked. A Sarira is, when a man is unable to release his life essence for a long time. That area will shrivel up and turn into wrinkly old rocks. In the future, it wouldn't work even if he wants to get it up. Jun Moxie spouted with a turn of his wits. Truthfully, the concepted Sariras are not easy to explain in the context of this world as well, because this world does not have any monks or spiritual masters. Calcify into stones? Is it really so scary? Mei Shuayan gasped with shock, her eyes widening into two large circles. Yes. Yes. That matter which I spoke of is the truly urgent danger. Jun Moxie lamented bitterly. Don't you still have Miao Xiao Miao, Guan Qing Han, and the others? I heard that you've plucked that last Xiao Yi not long ago as well. They should be enough for you, right? There's no way you will form those Sarira thingies. Did you really think I'm an idiot? Mei Shuayan snorted and turned around. How could they be compared with you? Jun Moxie panicked and hurriedly said. The person I want to do the most is you. Pei, what are you talking about? Mei Shuayan was truly embarrassed this time, and she stomped her feet as she quickly disappeared with a red face, leaving behind only a single sentence. Quickly go and bring Qiaoying over here. Young Master Jun sighed despondently, as if he'd lost his soul. Seeing Jun Moxie coming towards him with a sunken expression, Gu Han hurriedly stood up. Right now, Gu Han could already see the situation very clearly. If they wanted to stop the invasion of the strange races, the only person they could rely on was Jun Moxie. As for the three holy lands, they were already unimportant now. Their side only had a ragtag bunch numbering about 60 to 70. And that was the full force of the entire three holy lands. Everyone that could come here could be said to be exceptional experts. But compared to Jun Moxie's evil monarch manor or Tian Fa's army, they were on a completely different level. Manor Lord Jun. Gu Han took a few steps forward and greeted Jun Moxie with a smile. Jun Moxie did not waste his words, directly stating his intentions. Senior Gu, I've come here to borrow a person from you. Gu Han raised his eyebrows, but he was not too surprised as he asked. Qiaoying? That's right. It's Qiaoying. Jun Moxie nodded. No problem. Gu Han did not even blink as he agreed directly. Following that, Qiaoying was called out. Seeing the look of confusion on her face, a protective glint flashed in his eyes. Little Ing, you will be following Manor Lord Jun from now on to deal with the strange races. But why? Why am I the only one being sent out right before the big battle? Qiaoying was obviously unhappy. Although the Holy Lands were weaker now, Qiaoying still held deep attachments to the Heaven Saint Palace. Little Ing, the situation right now is obvious. Only by going to Tian Fa's side can your abilities be maximized against the strange races. The Holy Lands are unable to give you the conditions to use your abilities to the greatest extent. These are the facts. As expected of the number one person of the Heaven Saint Palace, Gu Han had managed to guess that Jun Moxie must have already come up with a plan to deal with the strange races the moment the latter asked to borrow Qiaoying. All of a sudden, Qiaoying felt an unprecedented feeling of loneliness. Although both sides' camps were close to each other, Qiaoying could faintly sense that if she went over now, it would most probably be the final time and she would be bidding them farewell. This kind of inexplicable feeling caused her to feel extremely complicated, and she didn't know what to do. Little Ing, you go over first and look for Venerable Mei. Gu Han waved his hand as a trace of unwillingness flashed in his eyes. I will speak a few more words with Manor Lord Jun. Qiaoying nodded, taking another deep look at all her friends and comrades of the Heaven Saint Palace whom she'd spent countless years with. Her eyes suddenly sparkled with tears. and she turned around, flying off without looking back again. Everybody from Heaven's Saint Palace also looked at her departing figure, smiling sadly as their eyes fogged with warmth when it came to this little sister whom they had known for over 1,000 years. All of them truly loved and cared for her from the bottom of their hearts. This parting was very likely an eternal one. But for her to go over to Tian Fa's side would be much safer for her. At the very least, it would be safer than if she stuck with us. Because we're all ready. When Gu Han saw Manor Lord Jun personally receiving Qiao Ying into her camp, he sighed, as if he'd finally managed to put down a heavy matter in his heart. Turning towards Jun Moxie, he said, "Manor Lord Jun, this old man has a few words that I would like to say." "Senior Gu, please say." Jun Moxie clasped his fist. Gu Han waved his hand, and in an instant, the space in the area was completely locked. A slight tremor surged through the air and became still. With just a wave of his hand, the area 10 zhang around them had been completely sealed, ensuring that nobody else could hear their conversation. Jun Moxie was originally behaving rather casually, but when he saw this, his expression turned serious in an instant. He knew that Gu Han definitely had extremely important things to say to him, otherwise, he wouldn't have acted so seriously. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1203. If one wants to soar to the heavens, one must first be a proper human. After he finished setting everything up, Gu Han turned and fixed his eyes on Jun Moxie. His face was complicated, and his eyes were conflicted. It was as though he was carrying some intense hope, and also deep plea. It was this exact look in his eyes that caused even a stone-hearted person like Jun Moxie to feel a tremor in his heart. This old man had lived for 2 entire lifetimes, a total of nearly 5,000 years so far. Gu Han said with a bitter laugh. In the last life, this old man's cultivation has stopped at the very peak of the Saint Venerable realm, ultimately failing to pass through the holy infant that followed it, left with death to face. I could only escape with my holy infant to be reborn again. I sought out a Xian Qi cultivation family by the name of Gu family, entered the womb of a pregnant woman and was born in the body of her infant. Today, I've reached the peak of the 3rd level of Saint Monarch realm. I owed my parents in the Gu family a debt of gratitude as heavy as a mountain. And so although the old Wushan Yun had already disappeared, this old man still chose to go by the name Gu Han. Gu Han only. A look of reminiscence flashed across his aged face, and he sighed, seemingly having remembered the 2 loving parents he had. Jun Moxie nodded slowly, creasing his brows. This junior shall not keep my thoughts from senior. There is a matter that I am unable to understand. Please ask. Gu Han said in a warm voice. When I met Senior Gu at the Heaven Saint Palace back then, Senior's cultivation seemed to be much higher than now. Jun Moxie asked. But I wonder, how did Senior's cultivation drop to such a level? Jun Moxie still remembered clearly back when he'd first looked into Gu Han's eyes and had nearly been lost in the starry space within his gaze. At that time, every move that Gu Han made seemed to be filled with a mystical and profound aura. It was as if he'd already formed some kind of connections with the heavens Tao. That was an extremely profound cultivation that was capable of shaking the world. Although the current Gu Han was still not someone that could be underestimated, he had clearly lost that transcendental aura from before. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the past Gu Han and one now were 2 completely different people. So you've managed to see through that as well. Gu Han laughed dryly and lampooned. We are in a cooperative relationship right now, and my situation is not exactly a secret either. So I shall tell you everything. Back then, I'd already reached the peak of the Saint Monarch realm. With just one more step, I would step into the realms of a half-sage. In other words, it's the same realm that Zhang Kuang had reached. At that time, I did not put anything else in my sights, and the only thought I had was to break through as quickly as possible, and so, I did not go out of my way to make things difficult when you visited, and did not even say much when you nearly cleaned out almost all of the treasures of our Heaven Saint Palace, because to me, if I could get past that threshold, nothing is an obstacle. Jun Moxie, do you know what that kind of breakthrough is called? Gu Han asked with a smile. What is it called? Jun Moxie smiled back with interest. Returning to the natural state, form of emptiness, body of half-sage, limitless spirit. If one wants to ascend to the heavens, one must first be a proper human. That is a sage. Gu Han recited solemnly, his expression heavy and stern. If one wishes to ascend to the heavens, one must first be a proper human. Jun Moxie mumbled, seemingly having some comprehension in his heart. Indeed, the most important point is this sentence. Gu Han nodded seriously. You have to make sure to remember it. It will definitely be useful for your cultivation advancements in the future. This is the greatest thing I've comprehended over my 2 lives. Whether one is good or bad, you need to remember when the most crucial time arrives, you are a human. To be a human, you should revert to the most origin nature, a simple and untainted human. Well said. In this world, there are far too few people who can be called proper humans. Jun Moxie nodded slowly and said, truthfully, no matter what we do, if we want to do it well, the most important prerequisite is to first be a proper human. If one could not even be a proper human, how will they talk about doing other things? That's right. That is exactly what it means. A look of admiration appeared on Gu Han's face, seeing that Jun Moxie had been able to comprehend his words so quickly. He felt extremely glad. Humans are doing, and heaven is watching. Perhaps the 3 holy lands might have indeed gone overboard these years, and I have been too overly concerned about my own moral integrity without thought of others, resulting in a problem with this matter, just as I had thought that I've already prepared very thoroughly to break through to the next level. Zhan Luanhui, who is also Zhang Kuang, showed up at Mount Heaven Saint. Gu Han clenched his teeth hatefully as he spoke to hear. In that moment, Jun Moxie came to a realization in his heart. The reason that Gu Han's cultivation had regressed definitely had a huge connection to Zhan Luanhui. The 9 illusory quicksand was stolen, and the lands shook as the pillar of heaven's mountains collapsed. This old man's soul had also received a heavy blow in that moment. Gu Han's eyes twitched as he continued. In that moment, I was concentrated on forging ahead in my cultivation, but my heart wavered because of that incident, and I was unable to stop my mind from slipping. My cultivation went out of control, dropping rapidly, and I only managed to stop it by force at the peak of Saint Monarch 3rd level. As the saying goes, when one rows against the current, if one did not progress, they will regress. To receive such a heavy blow in a crucial timing like that, it was already a great mercy, and a proof of your powerful mental fortitude that you hadn't completely lost your mind and become a raving madman from cultivation deviation. Jun Moxie sighed and nodded, finally understanding where the problem was. No wonder Gu Han felt so vastly different from the first time he saw him. All right. Now that we're done with the idle talk, Jun Moxie, this old man wishes to talk with you about the important matters. Gu Han's expression turned serious, and he looked sternly at Jun Moxie's face as he slowly said, this old man has a few requests that I hope that Manor Lord Jun can promise me them. Please speak. Jun Moxie also grew serious. As long as I can accomplish them, I will not turn them down. The greatest wish of my life is to be able to step into the realms of a sage. And then, I want to break through the confines of this world and roam through the world, traveling the entire universe. Gu Han breathed heavily and said. But now, all this hope had already turned into ash, holding no more meaning. Right now, all I wish to do is to completely eradicate those strange races freaks. But with just the strength of the three holy lands, this is clearly an impossible task. Gu Han looked fixedly at Jun Moxie. Right now, I can only trouble you with this wish of mine. I know that I do not have the qualifications to say these words, but the countless intelligent beings on this continent rest entirely in Manor Lord Jun's hands now. Senior is a little too pessimistic. It's still not that bad, right? Jun Moxie said lightly. No. Like you, I've also seen everything clearly already. The three holy lands are destined to be finished. Gu Han shut his eyes sadly. After this battle, the three holy lands will mostly likely not exist in this world anymore. Everything from here on can only be left to you, Jun Moxie. Jun Moxie raised his brows with shock as he looked at Gu Han. A peaceful smile hung on Gu Han's face as he sighed. Regardless of the final result of this battle, the glorious name of the three holy lands which has shone so brightly for thousands of years will forever be erased from this world. All of us have already readied ourselves to die for the sake of the people in this continent. As he said that, he chuckled. That day, you once said that whoever dares to mention the words, people of the world, again in front of you, shall die. However, I hope that you allow this old man to say those words once again today. Jun Moxie's heart suddenly shuddered, like the tumultuous waves on the ocean. As long as one was alive, they would have things that they pursued and goals they wanted to reach. To safeguard the continent and protect the common people was probably the belief that the three holy lands had held onto for the last 10,000 years. This was an indescribably grand source of glory for them. And it was also because of this glory that they had also committed too many sins, among which were many that had irreversible consequences, but similarly for the sake of this glory, they had been willing to live in terrible conditions far from human civilizations for countless generations. The sacrifices they had made could not be said to be small. And all of this was for a glory that was as vague as a dream, that only few people were aware of. Today, this glory had finally been shattered cruelly by Jun Moxie. Faced with the strongest army of the strange races they had ever faced, they'd still decided to stand out, preparing to use their lives to wash away their wrongs for the past 10,000 years. It was an incredibly sad outcome, but also exceedingly respectable. We have already decided that in the coming battle, everyone from the three holy lands will sacrifice our lives. Gu Han seemed to be talking about an extremely trivial matter as he continued. After our deaths, whatever happens to the continent, and to the common people, are fated to not be witnessed by us. What happens afterwards are entirely your matters. I do not dare hope that Manor Lord Jun will take care of the people, but I hope that Manor Lord Jun can promise me one thing. If it is possible, please kill off all of the strange races. Jun Moxie could not help but smile bitterly at this plea. This old man Gu truly looked highly upon him. Truthfully, for some reason that I cannot comprehend as well, I have a queer feeling that you have a hatred towards the strange races that is difficult for normal people to imagine. Gu Han furrowed his brows and laughed oddly. Otherwise, with your temper, after the matter with Xia Changtian, you would have immediately pulled out your forces after killing Xia Changtian, not caring about the matters here anymore. Even if the Xian continent was thoroughly destroyed, you would not stand out. That I believe that with your personality, you would definitely be capable of doing that. However, you still chose to stay. The reason for you staying surely cannot be for the sake of the people of the world, or the glory of Tianfa, then. I'm truly curious. Why do you hate the strange races so much? I'm truly curious about that. Gu Han asked with interest. Because they are very disgusting, aren't they? Would this reason suffice? Jun Moxie said with a bitter smile. Why did he hate the strange races? For a model nationalistic youth, this was an extremely easy question to answer. But in this world, there was no way for him to explain this. There didn't seem to be a way for him to explain it properly. I can't say that I'm just venting my anger because those disgusting strange races remind me of another despicable and shameless invading nation, right? A certain nation that he would not be able to quell his hatred against even if hacked every single one of their old and young with 10,000 blades, and put all of them to death for 10,000 times. Can I say that I'm doing this because I was reminded of the countless heinous and perverted crimes that those Japanese soldiers who were worse than beasts committed in China in those 8 years of war? Could I tell you that I'm imagining myself avenging the 300,000 innocent souls of the cruel Nanjing massacre? There's no way to explain it. There is only one thing to do, which is to kill. Kill and massacre them until the heavens flipped over and the earth crumbled. I had also hated myself for being born 70 years too late in my past life. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1204. There's no need for you to remind me about this matter. Disgusting? Gu Han froze for a moment and laughed aloud in agreement. That is a wonderful reason. Those fellows are truly disgusting indeed. For that reason alone, they should all be annihilated. For Gu Han to be able to cultivate to the Saint Monarch level, he was naturally not an idiot with his intelligence and the knowledge that he'd accumulated after thousands of years. How could he not see that Jun Moxie had other reasons that he was unable to say? But regardless of what it was, that was only a question of secondary importance. The main thing was that Jun Moxie did harbor killing intent for the strange races. From here on, if the greatest threat, which is the strange races, are removed, and there are no more 3 holy lands, leaving only the evil Monarch Manor and Tianfa, you will have to rely on yourself to be prudent. Gu Han's words sounded as if he was leaving behind some last words, and his tone was very heavy. Jun Moxie, you must not think that only humans are capable of doing evil. And don't think that only bad people will commit crimes. Once a good person turns bad, the evil deeds he does will be something so huge that even the so-called bad people cannot match up to. You must remember the words of this old man. That is indeed true. Jun Moxie sighed. When a bad person did evil things, he would at least know in his heart that his actions were evil, and he would have some inhibitions in his heart. But if a good person treated an evil act as something with good intentions, the influence of that act would be huge. Because in his heart, this evil act was right and just. It was an honorable act. With that kind of motivation and belief, he would have no inhibitions at all and would use all methods to see that evil plan into fruition. The trust that others had for this good person would also be tremendous and would offer him their aid unconditionally. Ultimately, the harm that it caused would be inestimable. The best example right now was exactly the 3 holy lands. If Jun Moxie had not transmigrated over, bringing the last bit of light into this world, it would likely have become as prophesied. Shattering like a dream. 10,000 years of glory turned to ashes in an instant. Gu Han laughed bitterly, his thoughts completely aligned with Jun Moxie's in that moment. However, he did not say anything about it, and Jun Moxie would naturally not mention it as well, from the looks of it. This old man before him had already hardened his heart to pay for his sins with his life. In that case, was there any need for them to talk about the matters of the past anymore? Although the wrong had already been done, the intentions of a good person and a bad person were ultimately different. Was there a need to continue to step on the last bit of dignity of a good person who'd done wrongfully? Especially for a person who'd realized his mistakes and was willing to pay any price to right that wrong. Birds cry plaintively before they die, and men speak kindly in the presence of death. My final words for you are that in the future, you must properly keep the Tian Fa Xian beasts in check. Gu Han warned seriously. Most of the Tian Fa Xian beasts are straightforward and simple-minded. Without the scheming minds of humans, their personalities are also very lovable. Having great courage to charge and fight, they could be said to be the best candidates for death knights. Anyone would wish for this kind of warriors to be under them. And you have also received the loyalty of Tian Fa, this much is undeniable. However, precisely because of this, the personalities of Xian beasts also mean that they can be very easily susceptible to being deceived by other humans. Once they accept a certain kind of reasoning, they will not change their minds easily, and this is also where you are the most successful. But on the other hand, it is also an area you have to be cautious in. With the Holy Lands gone, the peak experts of Tian Fa will sooner or later come into contact with humans. At that time, no one can accurately guess the results. I hope that Manor Lord Jun will not misunderstand, since this old man's words are hard on the ears. Gu Han said with a heavy sigh. Jun Moxie lowered his head in deep thought, and he nodded. I can guarantee that before I leave this continent, they will not do anything too out of line. Indeed, you can guarantee it. And I trust you 100%. If you, Jun Moxie, cannot even do that, you will not be the evil monarch anymore. However, what about after that? Gu Han asked. You said it yourself just now, you will leave sooner or later. And my guess is that you will be traveling along the same path as the 9 Nether first young master. Right? Your future path is inestimable. And it is within reason that you will not stay long in this world, perhaps 100 years from now. Or even 1,000 years from now. Or even in just the next 10 or 20 years. You will leave. After you leave, who will be able to hold up Tian Fa? Gu Han looked towards the vast Tian Fa army and nodded. For the sake of dealing with this immediate danger right now, you've raised the strength of Tian Fa to an unimaginably terrifying level. If a single expert with this kind of strength suddenly lost his self-restraint, there will not be any other powers in this continent that would be capable of stopping him. And you had actually raised hundreds of thousands of such experts. This continent might not end up being destroyed by the strange races because of your presence. But similarly, because of your presence, the Xian continent could now turn into a playground for Xian beasts. Jun Moxie's expression was dark, and it was difficult to determine his expression. If we think about it in an even more pessimistic direction, it is certainly a possibility that the humans of the continent could turn into food, or even toys for Tian Fa's Xian beasts in the future. Gu Han continued heavily. Tian Fa's Xian beasts are very intelligent, and they are very loyal, being true to their feelings, to the people that they've acknowledged. This is something that nobody can deny. But there is also another irrefutable truth, that is the word beasts will forever exist as part of their nature. Their nature for blood and battle is extremely obvious to see. Jun Moxie's expression was incredibly ugly. The reason that this old man had said so much was not to ask you to do anything, that it was simply a reminder. Gu Han said lightly. If that time really comes, regardless. This old man is fated to be unable to see it. What do the matters of the future have to do with this old man? Jun Moxie pursed his lips. Since you've already seen through this, what is the point of saying all these right now? Wouldn't that be even more meaningless? Rolling his eyes, he continued, Gu Han, what you said indeed makes sense. And that future you described indeed has a chance of happening, however. That is all the matters of the future. Who can really predict what will happen in the future? Surely it's a little too early to talk about this now. Gu Han laughed bitterly and shook his head. From that sentence alone, he could see the extent of love and care that Jun Moxie had for the Xian beasts of Tianfa. In the heart of this evil monarch, the people of the continent might really not be comparable to the Tianfa Xian beasts. This matter was truly somewhat queer to Gu Han. No matter what, Jun Moxie was a human, so why didn't he have any thoughts for the human race? This was something that he couldn't figure out even if he died. If one was not a fish, they would naturally not understand the joys of a fish. All right. This old man will not talk about this matter anymore to avoid any unhappiness between us. Gu Han sighed helplessly. No matter that, I already have a fixed view in my heart. So no matter what you or anyone else says, there is no possibility of my mind being changed. Jun Moxie chuckled. So, you should save your breath and quickly recite all your last words in one go. Gu Han's eyes turned white with anger. What does he mean by, quickly recite all your last words in one go? This old man may be approaching death soon, but it's not to that extent yet, right? The way this fellow speaks is as if I'm done for sure. To have a conversation with this brat, one truly has to make ample preparations to be angered to death at any moment. What are you looking at me for? Jun Moxie saw the old man staring fiercely at him, and he found it ridiculous. I say, old Gu, did you think that I was cursing you to die? You were the one who said that you'd lived to your fill and wanted to die. I'm just respecting your opinions. I'm not stopping you. But you are still unhappy. Besides, you were the one who pulled me here to listen to your nagging. If you want to nag, just nag, but now, you don't want to talk anymore. What's going on? Are you depressed? Depressed? After hearing those words, Gu Han truly began to feel a deep depression looming in his heart. Forget it. This old man is someone that's about to die, so I won't stoop down to your level. Gu Han spat angrily, wanting to put an end to this subject. Isn't it right? You admitted that you're a person who's going to die too, you said it yourself. Not me. Jun Moxie made a soft tsk with his lips and said, what other last words do you have? I still have a lot of things to do over there. I'm in a hurry. Gu Han nearly fainted with anger. Feck. Even if I wasn't prepared to die, I would probably be angered to death by this brat. Jun Moxie, you are too overly cold towards life and death. Don't you feel that even though our three holy lands have done many things wrong, we will still fight a glorious battle in this last fight, not letting down our honorable name? Gu Han nearly suffocated to death. For old Master Gu to speak about the final plan of the three holy lands now was because still hoped to get a heartfelt praise from Jun Moxie. At least in this world, there should still be this one person who would understand the truth, even if the entire world was unaware. But there would be this one evil monarch who witnessed their great contributions. The only thing he wished for right now was to hear sincere praise from this evil monarch, that was all. Because right now, Jun Moxie was already undoubtedly the peak character of this world. But who would have thought that this kid would be stingy to this extent? Not to mention a word of praise, he didn't even say any sympathetic words. How should I put this? Even if all of you died in battle, I would not think that your deaths were very noble. Jun Moxie thought for a moment and said seriously, Gu Han, no one forced you all to be here for this battle, right? This is something that all of you sought, wanting to use your own lives to protect the honor in your hearts. This is a very normal thing, since I'm here. I will also tell you a truthful word, even I do not have absolute confidence that I will be able to return from this place alive, but what of it? As long as I did what I was supposed to do and have a clear conscience. Won't that be enough? Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1205. Please die after maximizing your greatest worth. Gu Han was stumped upon hearing this. But he returned to stroking his beard and agreeing. Indeed. As expected, Jun Moxie sees incisively. Jun Moxie continued. You said it earlier. With your death, you won't see anything that will happen in the future. If that's the case, why do you need to worry about how the world will be after your death? I serve the country while I'm alive, exhausting and devoting every single bit of myself. But why do I still need to worry about what will happen to the world after I've passed? Gu Han jolted, snapping off a lock of his beard. This Jun Moxie. I had just agreed with you. Then you start going on a different tune. I really don't know whether to laugh or cry at the way this guy works. Besides, you are all dying for the sake of protecting your honor, your pride. Isn't that so? In this world, there are people dying in this manner every day. If the wife has an affair and cuckolds the husband, in a fit of anger, he goes and pick a fight with the adulterer for his pride. Isn't it also for the sake of protecting his pride when he ultimately dies? Is there any difference between the two? Jun Moxie continued. Since everyone is doing it for their own pride, their own honor, for making sure that their own interests are not compromised, there is nothing different about it, right? Why must I sing some praises for your deaths? Could it be at a few heartfelt praises of mine will turn you all into immortals? Gu Han trembled with anger, his beard quivering on his face that had turned blue. If it wasn't because the time and place were truly unsuitable, Gu Han really wanted to have a battle to death with Jun Moxie. He's ridiculing us. Our glorious deaths for the sake of the lives of this world receive the same kind of remark that cuckolded men get. This is plain bullying. Unacceptable and outrageous. Jun Moxie. Gu Han yelled while panting heavily, a sinister look in his eyes. Old Gu, you've lost your composure. Jun Moxie kind-heartedly reminded. I've lost my composure. I've lost my composure, your head. Gu Han panted in big breaths. You darned rascal can drive people to their graves by opening your mouth. You're truly driving me to my grave. It had to be mentioned that having a sharp tongue was not this old Gu's forte. Although his entire face turned red from anger, he couldn't come up with that many vulgar terms. Jun Moxie was about to open his mouth when Gu Han suddenly stretched his hand and stopped him while catching his breath. Don't. Please don't speak first. Wait for this old man to finish speaking before you go ahead. Jun Moxie was perplexed at what's going on. Why is he speaking so politely? Aside from the war, there is another threat that remains. Zhan Luanhui. This person is not dead. Gu Han finally calmed down after catching a couple of deep breaths. It was the first time in 3,000 years that his emotions became this agitated. He wasn't this furious when he found out that Zhan Luanhui had stolen the 9 illusory quicksand. Regardless of whether the 3 holy lands exist after this war, you must be wary of Zhan Luanhui. Gu Han soothed his breathing and said. And the 9 illusory quicksand. This thing has tremendous effects on the spirit, and Zhan Luanhui has stolen it in such great quantity. If you meet him, you must be careful. Absolutely do not be complacent. How terrifying Zhan Kuang is still not what you can imagine with your current level. Jun Moxie remained silent for a while before replying. Thanks. Thanks for nothing. Gu Han snapped angrily. It is already a great blessing that you did not drive me to my death earlier. But I wonder if Senior's emotions are still as agitated as before? Jun Moxie asked. Winking. Gu Han chuckled helplessly. I understand your intentions. You were thinking of infuriating this old man so that I could vent it out and reduce my wish to die. Isn't it? But you've wasted your efforts. And I've also been angered by you in vain. He let out a long sigh and said desolately. The legacy of the three holy lands have gone on for 10,000s of years. It is the fruit of the labor of countless people. I led the three holy lands for 2 lifetimes. 5,000 years. And the heaven saint palace of the three holy lands can be said to be where all my efforts went into. The pillar of heaven's mountains collapsed. The heaven saint palace is destroyed. I fell from peak levels to where I am now. At this point in time, I feel that this is where my life ends. You do not need to say any more. You've gotten it wrong that I did not say that I wish to stop you from dying. Ah. Jun Moxie paused for a while before continuing. I only wish to ask something of you. Ask something of me? How rare. Speak. Gu Han said. The atmosphere of the three holy lands is a little too depressed and pessimistic. Gu Han. Look at your men, all of them look like they're carrying a volcano, oozing with the urge to battle and die any moment. Jun Moxie said coldly. Indeed. This is the spirit that we should have while desiring to sacrifice our lives for the continent. Don't tell me there is something wrong about this. Gu Han replied. I am not trying to doubt your determination, and not asking for you all to give up on your wish for death, but I wish to request of you all that if you really want to die, please die after maximizing your greatest worth. Gu Han, including you, every one of you from the three holy lands harbors the same thinking. Then, let me ask you, when the battle begins, how many experts from the three holy lands will be rushing to self-detonating? Gu Han was stunned. Indeed. Just as Jun Moxie said, many people from the Holy Lands were thinking of this the moment the battle started. They'd charge into the strange race's troops and self-detonate. A quick death. Killing the enemies as a form of redemption. With the strength of a Saint Emperor expert, they'd definitely be able to kill hundreds of strange races with ease and more than 10 hell-enduring ghosts. They can even kill off a couple of Frenzy Blade-enduring Earths. Then self-detonate. And drag more along with them. If they immediately self-detonate the moment they go into battle. Don't you find it a little wasteful? Jun Moxie continued apathetically. If you really want to die, you must die after maximizing your greatest worth. If you can kill 10,000 before dying, why do you have to self-detonate only after killing 100? Since you've decided to fight to your death, why don't you maximize your greatest worth before you go? So I only ask that you all go on to battle with a regular state of mind. Only when there is really no way out. There is no other way. Then self-detonate. Jun Moxie rolled his eyes and stared coldly. Don't think that I'm heartless. I did not only say this to you all. I also said this to my brothers. And even to myself. Because this is not only your battle, but also ours. If we're talking about dying, with the current number of people left from the three holy lands, you're merely a handful when compared to us. Death is possible for anyone in this battle. It could be that everyone else dies and I remain alive. But it can also be that all of our men die, but the ones who survived are your men from the Holy Lands. This is something that cannot be determined. The matter depends on the individual, but our fate lies in the hands of the heavens. Old Gu, you've lived for 5,000 years. You should understand the brutality of war better than I do. War has always been like this. There has never been someone who said this person definitely will not die in this battle. And that person really did not die. Instead, He may just be the first one to die. The one who dies the fastest. So please don't entrust me with the funeral arrangements that I may not necessarily survive, who knows. I may still need to rely on you to help me collect my corpse. And perhaps there may not be any corpse. Because if I am destined to die, I will definitely drag a few more enemies along with me right before I die, so as to lessen some burden for you all. I hope that you all will be able to do the same. At least, don't go on a mass self-detonation display session for some bullcrap honor for the 3 holy lands. If I wanted to watch a fireworks display, it's not worth it for me to come all the way here for it. Jun Moxie looked at Gu Han coldly and spoke indifferently. So I beg of you, please don't die so foolishly. Please don't die this idiotically. Because if that's the case, even if you die, I will still look down on you. Even if you commit suicide to atone for your mistakes after we've won, I will definitely not stop you. But in this battle where hope is bleak, please fight with all your strength and don't rush to self-detonate. Understood? Gu Han was completely stumped. Indeed, all of them felt hopeless about this battle. At least, for those from the 3 holy lands. Which was why they all made up their minds to die for a good cause. But could he deny what Jun Moxie said? On what basis could he confirm that Jun Moxie, Tianfa, and the evil monarch Manor would not die? A wake-up call. I've already become so pessimistic that I wish to hand all responsibility to Jun Moxie and close my eyes for eternity. This is an extremely irresponsible and selfish thing to do. Turns out I am wrong. I almost made another serious mistake. Gu Han sighed guiltily. He felt ashamed. He still felt valiant about his own decision earlier. But right now, he realized that he was a complete and thorough fool. The one who had never taken the bigger picture into consideration was himself and everyone from the 3 holy lands. Death is an extremely easy task. Everything is over when you close your eyes, but there are still things in this world that are more cruel than death. Do not ever think that death will solve all your troubles. Only cowards escape by dying. And all of you right now are a bunch of cowards who are itching to escape your responsibilities through death. Gu Han began to perspire, feeling his heart beat faster. If you do not have anything else to say, our discussion shall end here. I still have many arrangements awaiting me. And as to you, old Gu, I sincerely hope that you can go, comfort, and convince all your suicidal cowards to wake up. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1206. Gu Han's last request. Jun Moxie spoke coldly. Gu Han, old senior Gu, that I wish to ask of you to remember. You must remember that from this moment on, I do not wish to hear anyone mentioning, I want to die. If anyone does, I will instantly satisfy his wish. There is no need for him to go and play self-detonating with the strange races. That I can instantly fulfill his wish. Let him die without any pain. It will definitely be better than self-detonation. At least, he'll have an intact corpse. Jun Moxie slowly turned around with his back facing Gu Han. Perhaps you have not realized how demoralizing a sentence like this is to the spirits of an army. Or perhaps you even think that it is very stirring and moving, or can even make others shed tears. But to me, those who say words like these at a time like this is unforgivable. They cannot be redeemed even if they're hacked to pieces, and won't be pardoned even if they pay with their lives for eternity. Dying after being cuckolded is merely an individual's death. But all of you dying like this will indirectly cause the death of countless of my brothers. So many saint monarchs and saint venerables killing themselves out of despair. What use do we, who are weaker, have? Is there any meaning in resisting? Take a guess. Will there be anyone who thinks this way? And how many people will think this way? Jun Moxie continued mockingly. Don't think that I was insulting or blaspheming your spirits with my words earlier, but it is a fact that all of you recklessly self-detonating are really worse than those cuckolded men, the way I see it. At least those who have died after staking their lives still have some spirit, while all of you don't even have the slightest bit. The 10,000 years honor. The final glory. At the same time you protect it with your lives. You treat it as a dog's fart in your own hearts. Jun Moxie slowly took 2 steps and raised his hand, gently knocking against the walls of this space that was frozen. Old goo. You don't wish for me to forcefully exit from your spatial lock, do you? Please wait. I still have one more matter to entrust to Manor Lord Jun. When Gu Han turned around, Jun Moxie practically got a shock. Gu Han's hair had turned completely white in this short span of time. The first time they met, Gu Han still had dark black hair and looked no different from any middle-aged man. The second meeting at the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, Gu Han, who had suffered some injuries, had some white hair and wrinkles in his face began to appear, and seemed to have aged considerably. And in just these couple of days, Gu Han's hair had turned completely white. In these mere couple of days, the blows that this saint monarch suffered were truly too great. First, it was the sudden destruction of the Heaven Saint Palace that he had protected for 2 entire lives. Then, the Pillar of Heaven's mountains had also collapsed, which was the equivalent of his belief being sucked out of him. He practically turned into an empty shell. And that was not all. His Xian cultivation, what he had been most proud of his entire life, also suddenly dropped just when he was about to break through. Drastically. If it was only this, he may still be able to take it. But after that, he found out that the 10,000 years of protection from the Holy Lands, the war for seizing the heavens that he had been forking out 5,000 years for, was a huge mistake. This had completely crushed his mind. His only goal became death, and only death. To perish with the strange races. But now, he was told that dying like this was trying to escape and was the act of the most shameful coward. Worse than those men who were cuckolded. Gu Han completely broke down. Utterly and thoroughly. His profound Xian skills instantly gave way at this instant. The appearance that he had maintained for thousands of years completely withered in this instant. But Jun Moxie still felt that there should be some other reason. Be it Gu Han, or the legend, Wu Shan Yun of the past, he shouldn't be this fragile. Lastly, I would like to ask of a personal matter of you. Gu Han remained silent for a long while, until Jun Moxie was getting a little impatient. He slowly turned around with a glint of tears in his eyes. Please, you must, take good care of Qiao Ying. Jun Moxie couldn't help but turn silent. Qiao Ying is a pitiful girl. The all-seeing eye brought her accomplishments. But it is also because of the all-seeing eye that she was brought into the Heaven Saint Palace since young and spent thousands of years alone. Although a long time has passed, her heart and mind are still young. The happiness that women should have, a husband and having children, she doesn't have any. Not a single one. For the Holy Lands, for the war for seizing the heavens, she has given everything. Right now, I entrust her to you. Gu Han looked at Jun Moxie with a pleading look in his eyes. I hope that you can take good care of her. If it is possible, if she survives after this war, I hope that she will be able to find somewhere she belongs. Find her own happiness, the happiness that she deserves as a woman. Jun Moxie continued to remain silent. Because he could tell that Gu Han was not done speaking, that he should still have other matters to entrust. But Gu Han stopped, looking listless and sorrowful. I am very curious. The matter of Qiao Ying having the eye of yin yang. There shouldn't be anyone who knows other than her close ones, perhaps. Even her close ones may not understand what it is that she has. Something like this is not a rare thing. There are often stories of children from various families who can see bizarre things. With time, this sort of natural gift will gradually fade away and they become just as ordinary as anyone else. Jun Moxie coughed before asking. Why is it that only Qiaoying was discovered by you? Is it really just a coincidence? Gu Han's body jerked. But he did not say a single word for a long time. Only staring at the air as his lifeless eyes turned red. He finally shut his eyes and said, because Qiaoying's father is not any ordinary man, she's my daughter. Although Jun Moxie guessed something, he was still shocked by this statement. Jun Moxie had noticed something amiss from Gu Han's affection towards Qiaoying. And that reluctance earlier and that look of relief that Gu Han displayed when Qiaoying went over to Tianfei's army. But he had never imagined that Qiaoying was Gu Han's daughter. Because the disparity in their ages was truly too great. An emotional attachment has always been the hardest aspect to break away from since ancient times. In my previous life in the Heaven Saint Palace, my beloved wife had already passed away 200 years ago. Gu Han said bitterly. For a period of time, I missed her day and night, and often dreamed and stood at the summit alone to reminisce the former days. But I discovered then that it was my devoted stubbornness to those days that caused my skills to improve greatly. I passed through all those stages easily, because at that point in time, aside from my deceased wife, there was nothing else on my mind. My mind was clear and my cultivation improved exponentially, due to love. Feelings. Jun Moxie gently sighed, practically guessing what he was about to say next. After another 1,000 years, my heart, mind and skill have already become still. For a long time, there were no signs of a breakthrough. That I didn't know what to do at first. Believing that effort would lead to progress, another few hundred years passed. But it still remained the same. Then I remembered that I was able to break through because of my deceased wife, but my wife had already passed for 1,500 years. Even if I forcefully tried to remember, all the memories were a blur, and I no longer felt the tiniest bit of sadness, Gu Han lamented. And so you thought, as opposed to staying like this, might as well go back to the mortal world to find another love again. Jun Moxie sighed, not knowing whether to reprimand him or not. This sort of situation was not uncommon. Some people use the power of their vengeance to break through. Some use women for double cultivating to break through. And some massacre their way to a breakthrough. But one thing was for sure. And no matter what you use as an aid, the moment you rely on an external force, you will definitely not be able to truly reach the peak. Especially when you were doing it this intentionally. Gu Han clearly planned to draw support from the passing of emotions to aid his breakthrough. This was not that unusual a method. That was exactly the case. Gu Han nodded his head. Back then, I had cultivated for 2 lives, had been living 1,700 years as Gu Han.by maintaining my appearance. I looked like those in their 30s, with a disguise. I looked completely different from my original self. After I left the mountains, it did not take long for me to find a suitable candidate. Gu Han sucked in a breath sorrowfully. I only wanted to seek that feeling of being heartbroken. So I found a maiden who was unable to cultivate Xian Qi that I still remember. She was called Xiao Qingyi. She was an extremely good lady, but was born with a frail body. Since I wanted to love her wholeheartedly and put in all my feelings, but must watch her perish. This sort of feeling is truly. Numerous years later, she bore me a daughter, and her health deteriorated. She finally passed away 2 years later from being unable to recover from a grave disease. Gu Han's voice trembled. Before she passed, she grabbed onto my hand and said, "No matter what, you must take good care of our daughter." Then, She said one final sentence before closing her eyes forever. But even now, that sentence of hers, guilt tears away at my heart just from remembering it. She said, I know you are a capable person. I do not blame you. To be able to spend these few years and be your wife. I am content. I'm really content. And that is enough for this life. Gu Han sobbed as tears spilled from his eyes. Jun Moxie let out a deep sigh, yet another wise maiden. It was a pity. Since ancient times, most beauties led a rough life. This Gu Han is really ruthless, but although he created what he suffered, he was truly pitiful. He may have obtained that heartbreaking devastation he needed for a breakthrough, but he wouldn't be able to walk out of it for his entire life. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1207. Extreme Contradiction. With the sharpness of a woman's instinct, it'd really be weird if she didn't notice anything unusual about Gu Han. But the most remarkable thing was that this lady never requested anything, hiding it in her heart, fearing that it would destroy this beautiful marriage if she brought it up. To be able to spend some years with the person she loves deeply, she was already content, with no other requests. Her only worry was her own daughter. Perhaps it was this devoted love and forgiving understanding that left Gu Han in such great agony until now. Extreme about love, feelings, and matters of the heart, this intentional act left him in unforgettable agony for thousands of years. Especially when there was Qiao Ying, who constantly reminded him about it. I had wanted to entrust Inger to a trustworthy relative, for her to live an ordinary but sufficient life, but I found out that she has the all-seeing eye. Gu Han let out a trembling sigh and remained silent for a while. The war for seizing the heavens back then, the stealth techniques of the strange races had caused us unimaginable deaths and losses. So you brought your own daughter into Mount Heaven Saint, and using the responsibility of the sake of the world and imprisoned your own daughter for thousands of years. And because of this, ruined her lifelong happiness. What a great father. Jun Moxie said coldly. To be honest, Jun Moxie also couldn't help but let out a sincere sigh. How many sacrifices did these people from the three holy lands make for the war for seizing the heavens? They definitely did not just sacrifice their own lives, they sacrificed their kinships, friendships, relationships, and everything. Are they fools? Are they stupid? Are they noble? Are they worthy of admiration? Or worthy of being spit on and cursed at? At this moment, Jun Moxie only felt very confused that he could criticize Gu Han as a father, condemn him for being a heartless lover, but Jun Moxie couldn't find a suitable reason to scold him for everything else. He really didn't know how he should judge this sort of spirit. Should he praise him or condemn him? Looking at Gu Han before him, Jun Moxie really didn't know how he should see him. Should I admire him? Or look down on him? Scold him? Or praise him? Those who were pitiful must have something to be despised. This statement was extremely true. He was truly the first person who was able to make Jun Moxie to feel this conflicted throughout both his lifetimes. Jun Moxie despised him to the extreme and looked down on him in disdain, but he also secretly admired and revered him. If he was in Gu Han's position, Jun Moxie didn't know if he would be able to make such a great sacrifice. Even if he really made the world his responsibility, he couldn't. Even though he was not as heartless as Gu Han, he was also not as compassionate as Gu Han, but Gu Han's heartlessness was to his own family, his compassion was to the rest of the world. And Jun Moxie was the complete opposite of him. Gu Han was vicious and merciless. He truly thought about the world, the welfare of the common people. Speaking of his benevolence, Yet having to watch his wife pass on and nurture his own daughter into a weapon for the war for seizing the heavens with his own hands. He was sincere to the world, his ideals and honor, but he was truly vicious and heartless to his own kin. If it were you, how would you judge this person? I guess, since Qiaoying followed her mother's surname, she probably doesn't know about her birth. And that she has such a great father. Jun Moxie asked coldly, with Qiaoying's current birth. It was too easy for Gu Han to make false arrangement with his abilities. Of course she doesn't. How could I let her know? I already owe the both of them too much. Gu Han replied bleakly. I genuinely feel proud for Qiaoying to have a great and admirable father like you. Jun Moxie said mockingly. You have indeed given up your all for the Holy Lands. To be able to treat your beloved as a tool for cultivation. To treat your own daughter as a weapon, and even devoted your lifetimes to it. How admirable. Gu Han gritted his teeth. As if there was a tremendous ache in his heart. He suddenly yelled. In my 2 lifetimes. She is my only child. How could I not wish to find a good family for my own daughter? Let her live comfortably. How could I not wish to give her the love and joy of a family that she deserves? I wished to. How could I not? I wished for it so badly. But, if I did that, then what would the rest of the world do? Without the aid of Qiaoying's all-seeing eye, am I supposed to watch my brothers die in the hands of the strange races, one by one? All of them forced to perish with the strange races and sacrifice themselves valiantly? Indeed. I have despicably sacrificed my daughter's lifelong happiness. But do you know many losses my daughter saved the Holy Lands from? Gu Han clenched his fists. These are also my brothers. It can't be that my daughter should go and enjoy her happiness, but they should die. True. There's nothing wrong with your logic. But what you shouldn't have done, which is also what irks me, is that you had placed this heavy responsibility all on a girl. Jun Moxie said coldly. Then what use is there for men in this world? Those brothers of yours already enjoyed whatever they should have enjoyed. Beautiful wives and children. In batches. For thousands of years. Just their own families alone would be able to make a mountain of bones. Why didn't you talk about these? Jun Moxie said harshly. They've already enjoyed things that normal people are unable to enjoy. Even if they were to die, they deserve it. But you made your own daughter spend thousands of years without any color in her life. How cruel can you be, O great father? This world is a patriarchal society. At the same time men enjoy their special authority, they also carry a corresponding responsibility. If all those responsibilities that should be borne by men are carried by women, in exchange for the survival of men, if those brothers of yours still have a bit of conscience, they would have killed themselves from being so ashamed. Instead of shamelessly use that woman's talent as a shortcut to their victory to obtain their honor and praise. A victory like this is dirty. And downright despicable. You all. Even though you've done a lot for this continent, it is all shameful. You should feel humiliated if you are still a man, to get this sort of safety. If you still have the pride of a man, you should feel ashamed. Protecting the common lives of the world like this is worthless. War has always belonged to men. Thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s of men dying on the battlefield is what should happen. But you make this vulnerable woman go into battle to kill the enemy, to carry such a heavy burden, even at the price of the woman's lifelong happiness, of her remaining alone for eternity. Can you really not feel any guilt? Jun Moxie was not only a classic angry youth, but also a male chauvinist. In his previous life, every time he saw any royal family send out a princess for political marriage, He would start cursing. Why should the women be pushed out to sacrifice themselves for a war that belongs to men? Harmony and peace were exchanged using a woman. How could all the men continue to live without any guilt? In such great prosperity? What sort of ridiculous argument? Bullshit logic. Ballless logic. So when he heard that Gu Han had sacrificed his own daughter, Jun Moxie's words became sharp and incisive, leaving no mercy. From Gu Han's perspective, perhaps there was nothing wrong that it may even be worthy of praise, but Jun Moxie would never acknowledge of this sort of method. Perhaps he may have been too extreme in his speech, but Jun Moxie was an extreme person. And this sort of thinking was deeply rooted in him. If someone told him that the world would be at peace and the continent would be safe if he sacrificed Mei Shuayan, or any woman in the Jun family, Jun Moxie's first reaction would be to slaughter this person's 9 generations. Gu Han listened to Jun Moxie's criticism, but did not say a word. After a long while, he gently sighed and said, "Regardless of whether my decision back then was right or wrong, it has already been done. Now, Inger is over there with you. I entrust you with her safety. Whether we survive this battle, it is up to the heavens. But if she's able to survive, I hope that you will help me take good care of her." Jun Moxie laughed coldly. "Did you finally remember that she's your daughter only now? Only remembering your relationship with her after thousands of years? Finally remembering your only child right before your demise? Gu Han, you're such a hypocrite. Call me a hypocrite, shameful, or despicable. So what? Whatever you say." Gu Han's voice also turned agitated. It ultimately cannot cover the fact that blood is thicker than water. Of course the truth cannot be covered. But I have no responsibility to take care of your daughter. Why should I carry this responsibility? On what basis? Jun Moxie said indifferently. "This is your own matter. You sort it out yourself. I want you to marry her." Gu Han suddenly turned around and grabbed Jun Moxie by the collar. "Marry her. Take good care of her. I can tell that in her 1,000 years of life, she is only different towards you," he uttered through gritted teeth. "What a joke. I should marry her just because she treats me differently." Jun Moxie scoffed coldly. "Then, there's a whole ton of women that I really should marry in this world. The way I see it, all women who are a little attractive treat me differently. Then should I marry all of them? I don't care about other people. But you must take good care of my daughter." Gu Han panted his breath and suddenly smiled cunningly. "Jun Moxie, that is all I have to say. Did you think that I can't see that bit of lust you have? What a joke. We are all men. When you first came to Mount Heaven Saint, I could already tell. Only you are suitable for Inger in this world. Of course I have lust. Anyone who is a man will be lustful. You'll take a few more looks if you see a pretty lady as long as you are a man." Jun Moxie was not ashamed. Not turning red despite being called out by the girl's father, instead, he spoke fiercely. "I only wanted to play around. I do not have the slightest intention to marry her. Not even talking about anything else. Just the fact that she is your daughter. This daddy says he is not going to marry her. And I will not." Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1208. Arrival of the troops. Then, Jun Moxie pointed to Gu Han's hand that was gripping his collar and ordered, "Let go." "What did you say? Just playing around?" An extremely dangerous, sinister look filled Gu Han's eyes. Jun Moxie glared back provocatively. a cold smirk on the corner of his lips. But Gu Han suddenly chuckled and let go of his hand and said with great carefreeness, "Since you said you are playing around, then enjoy playing and continue to play. If an evil monarch of his generation wishes to play, what can I, someone who is about to die, do about it?" Jun Moxie was stumped. He really didn't expect him to reply like this. He couldn't help but curse. "Feck you. What are you saying? That's your daughter." "Why? Manor Lord Jun doesn't understand the human language I'm speaking?" Gu Han chuckled. "I have nothing else to say and will not continue to be angry with you here." Gu Han scoffed. "One more thing. She is not my daughter. Please remember. Do not ever let her know that she is my daughter. This is the last request I have of you." When Gu Han was done speaking, he suddenly removed the spatial lock and walked out in 2 big strides. He had already joined the experts from the Holy Lands. His hair and beard had all turned snowy white, but his expression was much more relaxed. His regained his magnificent bearing, as if he had suddenly turned into another person, although it had yet to return to the same level as when Jun Moxie met him for the first time. It was completely different from the dispirited man just now. Right or wrong, all his achievements had been spoken about clearly with Jun Moxie in that spatial lock earlier. Even if he was wrong, even if he was guilty, he had protected the continent for 10,000 years. Even if he was right and had made contributions, he had also done numerous things that were extremely wrong. But right now, none of these mattered anymore. The only thing important was the battle ahead. Gu Han merely turned up his nose at the merely playing around Jun Moxie spoke of. If the evil monarch was really this sort of irresponsible person, then Gu Han could only admit that he had misjudged. Just as he said, "No matter what you do, I do not know." To someone who went from extremely responsible to someone who was extremely irresponsible in a single second, Jun Moxie didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What the heck? What's this? What sort of person is he? But Jun Moxie also knew that the moment Gu Han stepped out of the spatial lock, all his agony, guilt, and shame no longer existed. Because he had handed everything over to him. Gu Han truly did not wish to live anymore. Similarly, the Holy Lands were destined to turn into an existence in the historical records after this battle. This was what they pursued and wished for. Even if Jun Moxie knelt down to beg them, they would not change their minds. Their minds were already dead. Jun Moxie couldn't stop their deaths, and he also did not wish to. Just as he said earlier, even if they want to die, they must die after maximizing their greatest worth. This was Jun Moxie's only request. This request may be cold-blooded and cruel, but it was the only request he could make. This was the only way to bring about more value to this battle. This was the only way to be responsible to the Xian continent. If he allowed these experts to go self-detonating after dealing with some small fries, then young Master Jun would really want to cry. A man of wartime must live free and at ease. If they had to die, they had to die a heroic death. To have a clear conscience and feel no qualms about this life. Even if they turned into clouds of smoke that ultimately filled the skies, they were the most heroic clouds. This was a man. This was not letting down the name of being a man. This sentence was not only Jun Moxie's request of the 3 Holy Lands, but also of all his subordinates, all the soldiers of Tianfa, and himself. Rumbling noises could be heard from the distance. The troops from Tianfa had finally arrived. All the aerial Xian beasts who were 7th level and above were deployed to bring them here, although they were not strong enough and needed to stop to rest. They brought forces with them at this crucial timing. When Jun Moxie went over, Mei Shuayan was checking the troops. Jun Moxie learned of good news. Aside from the Peng tribe and Monkey tribe, who were slightly weaker and still on their way, the Lion tribe, Panther tribe, Condor tribe, and Wolf tribe has a total of 20,000 men that arrived, bringing great relief to the shortage of manpower. Right now, Tian Fa had a total of 34,000 men, and the Holy Lands still had 7,000, making it a total of 41,000 men that could go out to battle, and all of them had reached venerable level. All of them were fully prepared for the battle. At noon, with Gu Han leading Mo Wu Dao and the rest, divided their 7,000 men into 10 different troops and came to Tian Fa's base in an orderly fashion, indicating that they accepted Jun Moxie taking full command. Jun Moxie did not refuse or reject the Holy Land's decision. No matter what discrepancies or enmity they had before this, right now, they were comrades standing in the same trench. The only exception were those 5 who followed Xia Chang Tian. They refused to join anyone else from the Holy Lands and remained outside. No matter how Gu Han convinced them, they remained unbudging. We will definitely partake in this calamity, but we absolutely will not join forces with you. We kill on our own. We don't need you to bother about whether we live or die. Since you guys watched from the sides when they sought us for revenge, then why do I have to listen to you now? Similarly, we will absolutely not accept command, especially the command of our enemy. Although they did not outright speak of this attitude, it was clear from their expressions and behavior. Jun Moxie didn't bother himself with this and even stopped those who wanted to go and convince them, let them be. Even if they want to go and self-detonate, no one will stop them. There will be a large-scale battle happening here anytime. A few more people didn't matter. Don't think that someone will go and coddle you just because you throw a tantrum. This young master doesn't have the time. Mo Wu Dao walked in with a dark expression. Not anything that he only stared at Jun Moxie, a conflicted look in his eyes. A pity. Jun Moxie did not have the time to bother about him. No matter how conflicted you look, it is meaningless to the current situation. But Jun Moxie exchanged a few sentences with someone who defended the old battlefield of the war for seizing the heavens cordially. Senior Leng Tong. Long time no see, how have you been? Leng Tong laughed bitterly and said, Manor Lord Jun, your speed is truly unparalleled in all of history. How admirable. Of course, he wasn't speaking of Jun Moxie's speed when he moved, but his speed at advancing. Jun Moxie's advancing speed was truly a little freakish. Even the 9 Nether first young master did not have a speed like this. A youth, barely 20, who had the legendary cultivation of a peak 4th level Saint Monarch was unbelievable. Furthermore, this youth was a wastrel debauchee who was not even a Xian cultivator 3 years ago. Jun Moxie laughed loudly and spoke sincerely. Senior Leng Tong, I still need to thank you for your clarity in distinguishing right or wrong back then. That I often reminisce senior's grace back then. Leng Tong chuckled. Ridiculous. I merely pushed the boat against the current back then. I believe that even if I did not make that choice, you would also have the ability to resolve that crisis with not the slightest harm. Furthermore, you were in the advantageous position back then. Haha. Although we say that, but Jun Moxie still owes you a favor. Jun Moxie chuckled before his face turned solemn. He asked slowly, will you be joining the Holy Lands this time? This sentence was asking if Leng Tong had come intentions to die this time. Of course. It is my greatest honor to spill my blood here. And my greatest wish. I, Leng Tong, have cultivated my entire life for nothing else but this war. Good. Jun Moxie nodded his head slowly and let out a long sigh. Leng Tong, truly a real man. A good man. You can't compare to me when it comes to specious arguments, escaping or advancing, but in terms of distinguishing right and wrong, and this ease of yours, I cannot compare. Even Gu Han was surprised when he said this. Although Leng Tong had significant cultivation, he was merely a saint. How could he receive such high praise from the evil monarch? With everyone's countless years of wisdom and experience, they could tell that Jun Moxie meant what he was saying and wasn't just trying to flatter him. This was praise and admiration for Leng Tong, but also a conclusion for himself. Only he knew himself best. Jun Moxie was clear that he still had too many weaknesses. An eccentric personality, egoistic, and extreme. Imagine, if he did not have the Hongjun Pagoda. In this world where the clenched fist was the biggest argument, he would have died numerous times already. If not for the existence of the Hongjun Pagoda, Jun Moxie believed that it was a positive estimate that he may be able to bring his own cultivation to that of an Earth Xian in a year with unwavering perseverance. As to the current level of a peak 4th level Saint Monarch, it was definitely impossible even if he dissected his bones and flesh and reassembled it together. Even if he didn't die, then the greatest achievement he would achieve would, at the very most, be tangled with Li Yuran in Tianxiang City all the way till the end of his life. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1209. Untamable Chu Qi Hun. He was indeed very rebellious and often liked to break conventions and challenge authority. The stronger the opponent, the more thrilling it felt and the more joy it brought. But this sort of personality in this world where strength and power determined your fate was definitely not somewhere he could survive for long. Perhaps as he enjoyed himself today, he would be killed by an expert tomorrow. His personality didn't distinguish between good or evil, only taking into consideration his own preferences. All that selfless righteousness of doing things for the greater picture was not even in his eyes. If he did not gradually turn stronger and ultimately climb where he was now, he would have probably turned into a pile of bones by now. The only trace he left in the historical records was as a teaching material, as a bad example. Yes, Jun Moxie was someone like this. He had already seen himself clearly. Jun Moxie was also human. So he had countless flaws like any other ordinary human, be it in his personality or habits. He was not a perfect person and can be said to be evil in certain aspects. But there was only one difference between him and others. He had great power that allowed him to disregard all these weaknesses. Or perhaps to say, he was lucky to have a cheating device like the Hongjun Pagoda and all the knowledge from his previous life, the wisdom of 2 lifetimes. All these were not something everyone had. While Jun Moxie had met with these, so his personality became his character. His flaws no longer flaws, and with his unwavering perseverance and the magical Hongjun Pagoda, his entire life became that of a legend. A legend was actually an exciting record of ordinary person, or perhaps someone with many flaws. When the monarchs of past dynasties ultimately succeeded, who cared if he had stolen chickens from his neighbor as a child? If he had peeped at maidens showering? Or robbed somebody? Even if they knew, it became an example of a successful man for encouraging others, and not evidence to incriminate him. There were countless little hoodlums in all of history, but the only one who was really famous was Liu Bang. There were also countless people who were forced to crawl between someone's legs as humiliation. But the most prominent was only Han Xian. Millions of people sold fake flowers, but only Li Kaxing made it big. It had always been the case of achievement over what was right or wrong and never the other way around. This was the most bizarre phenomenon of human society. Everyone would attack and resist this sort of behavior, disapproving of many things, but we use the flaws of famous people in the past to educate and encourage ourselves. A small hoodlum will be chased by the masses and cursed at for stealing a chicken, And everyone speaks of him disdainfully, but everyone will only laugh when they speak of the emperor having stolen chickens in the past. Then, they would sigh with sorrow that heroes also had times when they were left without a choice. And approve of it very understandingly. When you are in that state, that is the only thing you can do. Both of them stole chickens. But why was the former criticized while the latter wasn't? And even pitied and approved of? What was this logic? It was very simple. There was only one difference. The latter had succeeded. Only success. As long as you succeed, then your flaws will also be lauded. These was not scare talk. This was the truth. No matter how ridiculous it seemed, it was a fact. A sound of cloth flapping in the wind could be heard from outside. A cold, indifferent voice rang out. Fighting the strange races. How could I, Chu Qi Hun, miss out on something as grand as this? Whoosh! A man donned in white appeared outside the tent. Standing as straight as a spear, his eagle-like eyes looked at Jun Moxie. Chu Qi Hun. You've come. Jun Moxie cried in surprise. Who else could it be other than the king of assassins? The number one assassin of Xian, the supreme assassin Chu Qi Hun. Chu Qi Hun smiled and walked in slowly. Chu Qi Hun's current cultivation was merely a third-level venerable. It was no surprise that any random person in the tent was much stronger than him, but when faced with so many powerful experts, Chu Qi Hun's expression remained unchanged. His entire body was like a sword that had been unsheathed. A sharp sword can break, but it definitely would not bend. How did you come so quickly? Jun Moxie was really frustrated about this. News of the collapse of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and impending invasion of the strange races had not been released for long. Not a single super family had arrived yet. But how did this Chu Qi Hun, who always operated alone and should be getting the news last, arrive first? I accepted a deal for 30,000 silver. But this scoundrel fled all the way and ultimately slipped to somewhere not far from here. Chu Qi Hun laughed. But his facial muscles remained stiff, as if they were carved out of ice. Although he was genuinely laughing, in the eyes of everyone else, they still felt that this king of assassins was cold and eerie. Even though they know that his strength was not enough to pose a threat, they still felt shivers. I thought that I wasted too much time in pursuit this time and was feeling down about it. Then, I met with the disaster and was almost buried in that barren place, but I would have never expected that I would meet with this sort of rare and grand affair. Chu Qi Hun smiled. I wonder if I'm late. Well, old Chu, you've arrived just on time. Jun Moxie cackled, passionately bringing Chu Qi Hun in. The supreme assassin? One of the saints from the three holy lands scoffed coldly. Someone who is merely a venerable also came hurrying over. Is he in a hurry to court death? Chu Qi Hun's eyes narrowed as he looked at the saint that had spoken. Compared to everyone else present, I am undoubtedly the weakest. Naturally, I'm unable to compare with all of you experts here. But even with my meagerly strength, I will hurry over to help in a big matter like resisting the strange races. Whether I'm courting death or not is my personal matter. I don't care about my own life. But I wonder what that has to do with you. That saint was so angry that his face turned purple, slamming his chair. He was about to stand up and go on a rampage. Furthermore, I hurried here not because you invited me here. Chu Qi Hun scoffed coldly. You're from the three holy lands, right? Huh. If there was only the holy lands here, then this daddy wouldn't come to be involved in this muddy water even if you pointed a knife at my throat. Chu Qi Hun stared at that saint and coldly said, this daddy may only have the cultivation of a venerable, but I may not be unable to kill a saint. If you have any doubts, feel free to try. Chu Qi Hun may only have the cultivation of a venerable, But he did not flinch the slightest or display the slightest cowardice, speaking frankly before all these saints and saint emperors. But he was not wrong in what he said. With his skills in assassination, if he wished to kill a saint, it may not be something impossible. How dare you? That saint yelled. The pride of a saint did not tolerate such provocation from someone who was of a different level. Even if this person was the #1 assassin in the entire Xian continent. How dare you? Jun Moxie yelled furiously, a chilling look in his eyes as he glanced over. You are merely someone of a saint cultivation. What rights do you have to behave this outrageously before this monarch? This saint had criticized Chu Qi Hun's cultivation, and Jun Moxie used the same logic back at him. This was instant karma. To those that he admired, even if they were not of significant power, he did not allow any outsider to blaspheme them. Just like how it was for Tang Yuan in the past. And Chu Qi Hun now. That saint was so angry that his face turned red, and his chest was about to explode, but he remained standing without saying a single statement. He may dare to criticize and act against Chu Qi Hun, but he didn't dare to speak up against the berating he received, because the one doing it was Jun Moxie. Chu Qi Hun dared to retort against him, but he didn't dare to retort against Jun Moxie. The difference here was obvious. Sit down. Mo Wu Dao ordered, looking at that saint angrily. We've already come to this state. How can you still try to ostracize others? Are we trying to kill one another? No matter what enmity Chu Qi Hun had with the Holy Lands in the past, he has appeared here today with the intention to do his part for the continent. He is a hero. A good man. And our friend. That saint sat back in his seat. His face completely black. It'd be weird if his face didn't turn black from being berated by young Master Jun than his own comrades. Mo Wu Dao. Huh. Well done. I had a few interactions with you before this. But only this instance makes me feel that there was logic in making you the lord of the elusive world of immortals. Jun Moxie praised. Mo Wu Dao gave a bitter smile but did not reply. Elusive world of immortals? Was there still any more elusive world of immortals? There was only a pile of rubble crushed under rocks, and countless corpses remained buried in there. And those were their kin and friends. Everyone from the elusive world of immortals felt like their hearts were being sliced open just remembering it. It was a pity that this culprit Zhan Luanhui ultimately escaped, although only his soul escaped. But he was still alive. The continent is about to perish. We can no longer bother about our own private enmity that we will probably not have the opportunity to seek revenge with our own hands in this life. This was the common and greatest regret of everyone from the 3 Holy Lands. Jun Moxie held onto Chu Qi Hun's arm and walked in, scanning everyone coldly. Everyone. From now on, there will still be large batches of people who will come to help the battle. Those that come may be spirit xians, sky xians, earth xians, and their cultivation may be worthless in your eyes. They may just be of an ant's existence to you. But please remember that those who arrive here are real men that want to do their part for this continent. They're all real iron-blooded men. Their hearts are redder than yours, and their blood is warmer than yours. I absolutely do not allow anyone to insult them. Even if it's a word or a sentence. If anyone dares to say anything of this sort, there will only be one result. Killed without mercy. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1210. The 9 Nether 14th Young Masters Battle. As the last few words rang out, Jun Moxie's sharp gaze stopped on Gu Han's face. Gu Han also nodded and lightly said, Manor Lord Jun's words are exactly what I want to say as well. If there are any more such sentiments within our ranks, Then without waiting for Manor Lord Jun to take action, this old man will personally behead such people. Anyone who comes here now are heroes of the continent. Whoever dares to humiliate such heroes shall die. As the words of the two rang out, the entire area was completely silent. The people of the three holy lands had already prepared for this battle for over 10,000 years. And they'd already grown used to it, but for the people who'd rushed over from within the continent, they were all here to lend a hand, despite knowing that they would die. Such people were truly deserving of respect. Smiling widely, Jun Moxie invited the great assassin Chu Qi Hun inside, directly bringing him into the tent with the other beast kings. After that, he arranged for Crane King and the rest to protect Chu Qi Hun, to prepare to raise his strength. Seeing Jun Moxie taking out so many pills and precious materials to raise his cultivation, Chu Qi Hun's face turned ugly as he asked, Jun Moxie, what is the meaning of this? Do you think that my strength is not enough? That I don't have qualifications to be on this battlefield? Jun Moxie smiled faintly and looked at him. If I was a person who frequently used grand logics to smash others, I would say to you at this moment I'm giving you the pills. Not for the sake of Chu Qi Hun, but only that the supreme assassin Chu Qi Hun can be more effective and kill more strange races experts, that I wonder if you would accept the pills if I gave such an explanation. However, I, Jun Moxie, am still Jun Moxie, that it's the same in the past. And the same for the present and future. When I gave you some pills back then, old Chu, I remembered that you didn't speak so much nonsense. Looking steadily at Chu Qi Hun, he'd scared. Could it be that the current Chu Qi Hun is no longer the same as the Chu Qi Hun back then? Chu Qi Hun suddenly stopped, and he laughed aloud. Good. How good it is that Jun Moxie is still Jun Moxie. As expected of the king of assassins, that I, Chu Qi Hun, acknowledged. With just those words alone, I feel a lot more comfortable in my heart. Since Jun Moxie is still Jun Moxie, then Chu Qi Hun will still be Chu Qi Hun. In any case, I will just owe you more of whatever I owed you before. I will accept these pills then, that it's also a good thing to raise my strength and kill more of those dirty strange races. Without any more talk, he received the pills and swallowed them. Some time later, lightning began to flash and fall from the sky. Until noon, the sky was still murky and dark. Jun Moxie, Gu Han, Mei Shuiyan, Mo Wu Dao, and another 8 other leaders sat within a large tent, sipping on tea. Although the atmosphere was somewhat heavy, it was still rather harmonious. Just at that time, a loud shrill suddenly rang out in the sky, piercing through the sky. This sound was the joint cry of 10 Xian cranes, a warning cry. Following that, the other Xian cranes that were monitoring the areas closer to them also cried out. An enemy attack? With the sharp warning cries ringing in their ears, Jun Moxie and the rest hurried outside, casting their gaze towards the south. The southern front was completely quiet, without the slightest disturbance. The crowd instantly felt an uncomfortable feeling in their hearts as they began guessing. Could there be another large change to the situation? The Tian Fa Xian cranes would definitely not issue warning cries for fun. However, the situation before them was clearly very quiet. Just at this time, Gu Han, Jun Moxie, and Mei Shuiyan, the 3 strongest experts, all furrowed their brows at the same time. These 3 clearly sensed a commotion at the far north, as well as the sounds of violent explosions. Someone is fighting about 2,000 li northeast of here. The battle is also rather fierce, and it should be the work of some peak experts. Jun Moxie's expression was heavy. His spiritual sense was far better than most Xian cultivators, And his hearing was the best as well. He was the first one to hear the sounds of battle. The northeast direction? Why would it be that direction? Gu Han and Mei Shuayan gasped with shock. They naturally would not doubt Jun Moxie's judgment, however. That was the direction that the main continent was, right now. Most of the peak experts of the continent were already gathered here. Or making their way to gather here. This was the most crucial moment right now. And even those experts had great enmity with each other. They would refrain from killing each other also. How could such scuffles create such huge commotions? All of a sudden, everyone felt a heavy bang in the far distance. And a slight tremor passed through the ground beneath their feet. In that moment, everyone's expressions changed. Although this tremor was light, the battle was happening thousands of li away. For a tremor to reach all the way to here. Just how fierce was the battle? In this world, which peak expert is not here yet? Gu Han asked as he looked towards the northeast. For us to feel the commotion from here. Just how terrifying is the battle? Could it be a sage-level expert? Everyone here were peak experts of the world. And they understood very well that such a violent commotion definitely meant that both sides were not ordinary people. The people fighting right now might have a strength that was comparable to the three of them whose cultivations were the highest here. It might even be higher than them. Even if Gu Han, Jun Moxie, and Mei Shuayan were fighting from that distance, the commotion from that battle might not be able to reach to this place. All of a sudden, Jun Moxie's expression changed and his eyes widened. Not good. The battle is coming closer and closer. The two's battle is moving towards our direction quickly. Everyone's expressions changed. Right now, it was the eve before the main battle. With the strength of those two experts, they should be the peak force of the Xian continent. That if they could join this fight on their side, wouldn't it be a great assistance? But on the other hand, with those two's strength, if they were the enemy, the damage they could cause would be unimaginable. Let us reason with them. Perhaps that we can pull those two into our ranks, greatly bolstering our forces. Mo Wu Dao said with a low gasp, however. His voice was filled with uncertainty. Could a fight of this level be so easily mediated by you because of your reasoning? As long as one side did not die, there was no possibility of this fight between peak existences to stop. At this time, a Xian crane flew over hurriedly and morphed into a sweaty 2-meter-tall man, crying out urgently. Elder sister, brother-in-law, two peak experts are fighting in the northeast direction and they are moving towards our location. I'm aware. Mei Shuayan nodded and said. The tall man smiled happily, jumped up, transformed again into a huge, snow-white crane, and flew away into the sky. He did not even stop to take a breath, directly returning to his station to monitor the situation. The booming sounds grew louder and closer, sounding as if mountains were breaking apart and oceans overturning, pushing towards their location. Everyone's faces turned increasingly heavy. Judging by this momentum, the cultivations of any one of those two were definitely much higher than most people present. Old Gu, in your memory, are there still any experts on this level in the world? And to have so many as two? Mei Shuayan asked. Everyone also looked towards Gu Han at this moment. How could anyone with such heaven-shocking powers be an unknown character? Moreover, two of them. But no matter how everyone tried to recall, they could not connect them to any experts they knew. There indeed are. Gu Han said with a bitter smile. But from this old man's knowledge, there is only one. One person. Who is that? Everyone asked together. Just at this time, a shrill hollow sound rang out, piercing into the sky. A few clouds that were passing by in the sky instantly dissipated, scattered into nothingness. Everyone drew a breath of cold air in shock. Did such strength really come from humans? Following that, 3 more weird knocking sounds rang out, and everyone felt as if a heavy hammer had smashed against their hearts 3 times. In that moment, everyone's faces turned exceedingly unsightly. That was clearly the sounds of a musical instrument. But what kind of musical instrument could create such shocking effects? Before the crowd could react, 3 more zeng 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 chin sounds rang out, streaming one long note after another. The entire world seemed to have been split into 2 by this strange sound. As these sounds rang out repeatedly, a number of people began to guess at the identity of the performer, and their faces changed greatly as they cried out. 9 Nether 14th Young Master. It is really him. Gu Han also sighed and nodded. That's right. The person that I'd thought of earlier was also 9 Nether 14th Young Master. Everyone's faces changed drastically. And a few people even gasped aloud. Some of them had even participated in the hunt for the 9 Nether 14th Young Master several hundred years ago. Now, hearing this strange musical notes again, sounding as if a clash between several different musical instruments, all of them managed to think of this horrifying demon lord. Such strange music and queer powers and a musical instrument that could play the sounds of many different instruments together. Apart from 9 Nether 14th Young Master's unique weapon, Divine Tune, there were no other instrument capable of such a feat in this world. However, wasn't the Divine Tune locked within the misty illusory manor? When did it return to the hands of this demon lord? Everyone knew very clearly that a 9 Nether 14th Young Master without Divine Tune and a 9 Nether 14th Young Master with Divine Tune were 2 completely different concepts. With Divine Tune in his hands, the 9 Nether 14th Young Master was a truly invincible existence. This story will be continued to chapter 1211. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.